Education Advisory Council. I call the meeting to order. To begin our meeting, I'm going to ask Brittany to please take a roll call.
Captain Larry Batto.
Here.
Christy Bennett. Maria Blanco.
Here.
Carmen Brabham. Bridget Bryant. Representative Kim Carver. Dr. Michelle DeMoliere. Senator Rick Edmonds. Amy Ewing. Jim Garvey. Jane Hamilton. Deputy Chief Nicholas Heinen. Antoinette Horde. Ariel Hughes. Representative Jason Hughes. Jody Joseph. Dr. Ashley Lucas. Tafta Miller. Amy Morin. Caroline Oglesby. Norma Palma. Jonathan Pierce. Dr. Paula Polito. Jen Roberts. Dr. Libby Saunier. Dr. Shanda Terriot. David Thibodeau. Hari Wahid. Shannon Weish. Amy Zapata. We have quorum.
Great. Okay, thanks. We're going to ask now for a motion to approve the November 20th minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? They're in your packet. Thank you, Jonathan. And a second? Thank you. I'm sorry, that was Ariel. I can't see, guys. I'm getting old. Even with my glasses, I can't see you. So I apologize if I don't get your name. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Any opposition? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. Paula?
Hello.
Good to see you. You made it in the traffic. No worries.
But the rest of the New Orleans crew is with
It was, yes, we were all sitting in the same traffic. Okay, we're going to move on to our first item, which is revisions to bulletin. Nope, I'm in the wrong place. Am I in the right place?
You're in the right place.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Revisions to Bulletin 118, the statewide standards and practices, and Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators regarding kindergarten screeners. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Townsend, the Deputy Chief of Policy, to provide an overview of these revisions. Actually,
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Ashley Townsend with the department. I'm excited to bring to you this policy item today, letting you all know about some revisions that are planned for BESI consideration at the March meeting. This relates to the kindergarten screener that occurred, one of the kindergarten screeners that occurred at the beginning of kindergarten. And the goal is to reduce the number of kindergarten assessments, and then it'll name the literacy and numeracy screeners as kindergarten screeners. So a couple of thoughts about this. One, the department has been looking really closely at how we can remove barriers to effective teaching and learning in the classroom, and how we can reduce the amount of time that students and teachers spend testing in general. So really trying to make sure that we have time and space for teachers in the classrooms to provide effective instruction, and to identify needs for support for students early on and be able to provide those to them efficiently and expeditiously. So our education priorities, two of those especially deal with literacy and math. And so this policy revision also brings this kindergarten entry screening into alignment with those priorities. Guarantee is it the next slide. Thank you. So I want to take a quick minute. I don't know if you've seen the press releases, but we are really excited about the improvements in Louisiana's national ranking that were just released a couple of weeks ago. Louisiana is not last, y'all. Louisiana is actually ranked 32nd in education now, according to the nation's report card. It's really exciting time to be Louisiana, and everybody's wondering, what is Louisiana doing? How do we get in on that? And of course, we're not satisfied, but we are pleased. This shows not just a change in other states' outcomes that changed our rankings, but a real increase in student proficiency. So students are better readers now than they were a couple of years ago. And we all know that is going to promote better outcomes for those students long term. We've already seen the uptick in math as well, because students can read the word problems. So we're very excited about this promise of progress. We've been putting a lot of work into our literacy efforts. And so if you want to go to the next slide. So I want to give you a little overview of the kindergarten screener process. So this is in place for literacy now, and it'll be in place for numeracy, piloting next year, learning year. The following year, it'll fully be in place for numeracy. So the screener process for literacy and soon numeracy, it occurs at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year. Very short screeners. For kindergarten at the beginning of the year, it's 4 1-minute long questions, so it's pretty efficient. But as a result of that, if a student isn't found to be on level or proficient or ready for that lesson 1 on day 1, then parent gets notified within 15 days. Hey, we have some concerns. Here's what we're going to do to support your student. Here's what you can do to support your student, bringing that parent alongside and helping the student be ready to access that on-level and core instruction. And then there are updates for the parents at the middle and the end of year to let them know the progress that's being made. There's an individual student plan that happens where we look strategically at those targeted interventions that will help the actual specific skills that students need help with. And then as we go along and provide those interventions, we do progress monitoring along the way to make sure the interventions are working. If they're not, let's change the intervention. Let's see if that works. If there's still concerns, there are processes in place at the school level to check for additional contributing factors. So does the student have some behavioral issues that need to be addressed? Are there some specific learning issues? Do we need to check for hearing? Do we need to check for all different kinds of things that could be standing in the way of the student making progress with what we're doing in the classroom? So that entire process occurs throughout the year. And then again, that middle and end of the year screener occurs as well. So the starting targets for beginning of kindergarten, it's phonemic awareness, alphabetic principles, fluency. Do they know their letters? Do they know the sounds the letters make? Do they understand phonemic segmentation and how our words are broken into sounds? Those really basic things at the beginning of kindergarten that help teachers know, are all my students ready for lesson 1 on day 1? And if not, how can I get them caught up as soon as possible? Karen, if you want to go to the next slide. So I know this is kind of hard to view from far away, but just to let you know some of the data that we're looking at, when you look at this beginning of year screener results, and then how that tracks along as we go, we see a large number of kindergarten students who are coming in not quite ready for lesson 1 on day 1. And this year, for example, we had about 70% of kindergarteners who weren't ready for that. And when you have a kindergarten class and that teacher is trying to, teach that first lesson, but first let me go make sure that all the students can access the instruction on that first lesson, it's a lot. Now, our kindergarten teachers are phenomenal. They're accomplishing Herculean efforts, and you can see they I don't know if this is on the slide, but they actually saw about a 20% increase in proficiency from beginning of the year to middle of the year, which is really great. But then you still have about 50% of the students who aren't ready for lesson 100 on day 100, which is still presenting a problem at that point. So really looking at how can we help teachers maximize the use of that class time, understand right away as early as possible, what do I need to do to help support my students? And then getting students the help that they need whenever our regular classroom instruction and interventions maybe are not quite enough. And then is that the last slide on that section? Okay, so happy to take any questions about this. So essentially what will happen, the policy would go into effect for next school year. School systems could still use and do still use additional screeners. For example, they have to screen for dyslexia in the spring. There are all kinds of resources available to those pupil appraisal teams that I mentioned whenever it looks like interventions are not playing out in class the way we would like them to. But as far as that, what every kindergartner has to take right at the beginning of the school year, we would let those teachers focus in on literacy and numeracy to give them time to do that work that they need to do. All right, thank you.
So this is really fun, exciting. I think falls in line with what the K through 12 is doing. And I mean, you alluded to it, but I think we looked at when we looked at Bulletin 118 was, and the revisions is it, it does exactly what we're trying to do and let teachers teach. And I think that's what a big initiative that the department's doing. And I you know, as an advocate who, you know, speaks with a lot of early childhood folks on a national level, there is a lot department for this.
Right. That's a great thought. Right now, there's not a mechanism to track that from before kindergarten to kindergarten, but I like the way you're thinking about how can we identify and make sure students are ready on day one. And locally, there could be some efforts around that. So that's an interesting thing to look more at. Thank you.
When
I just want to add to that, because of the influx of class since 2012 and the emphasis on literacy and language from birth through 4, we know those kiddos coming from Head Start and those type 3 proficient, you know, childcare, they're going to be ready because of the rich language that we've embedded from birth.
in yeah, absolutely. And Kyrie and Libby, you may remember this and some of the others, but before class started back in 2011, weren't we tracking and using Dibble's assessment? Weren't we able to track where these children were coming from? I thought there was a report that was done when we were looking at the
It
class.
wasn't a mandatory thing. It was something that was self-report if they reported it or not. So it wasn't widespread data. But I think the point is well made with the focus and the increase on literacy. I mean, it's clearly working in the state. I think the question I have is around what are the similarities, especially in the literacy domain with DRDP and DIBELS? And so what's the nuance maybe that you're trying to gain with just having one instrument? Because best practice would suggest a screener would screen all areas of development to make sure that children are developmental ready, because all those readiness skills help get them ready for the literacy pieces that we know are so critically important.
That's a great thought. And I think one of the things that we're thinking about is what do we do with these results? What happens if a screening instrument returns a score of a certain type in a certain area? And with literacy and numeracy, it's so well defined now. Schools have been doing it for a couple years now, and we're seeing really great results from it. And it's this idea of, okay, we need a little extra help in this area right here. So we're going to do these interventions. We know we'll address that. And then we're going to check and see if it worked. If it didn't work, go back and change it. And it's a really clear process that's operating at scale right now. And then if you think about the other domains that we're saying with this, not every single kindergartner needs to be screened on at the beginning of school year. What happens if there's additional needs in those areas? How will we know if students need those support? And that's where our pupil appraisal, our RTI, our SBLC processes come into the school, where we have people who are trained to do this type of screener, other types of screeners that can provide additional information to help activate some of those school level supports that are available to students who need extra help.
Yes, and there's just such a waiting period for children that may be struggling in multiple areas of development for them to be kindergarten ready. So I guess the question is if, as you think about the teams in the schools, particularly for kindergartners, is there a way to think through process so it doesn't take as long? They don't have to get through maybe a full 9 weeks or a full semester, and waste that time of really identifying root causes of what's holding them back from thriving.
I'm always happy to find a way to make a process work more efficiently. So that's a great thought. And you know, one thing that we've talked with some people about too that we're going to work on. And so if any of you would like to contribute, definitely would welcome it. But some guidance, it sounds like, would be helpful to help. Well, some guidance for both early childhood providers and maybe kindergarten teachers, school level people to help create that intentional handoff from early childhood to K-12, because there's definitely a need, I think, for both sides to understand where we're coming from, where we're going, just to help make that handoff more effective for the children too. So if anyone has ideas about something that we should include in that, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to include that for consideration.
So I have a question. So why would, I haven't been here for y'all's previous meetings, so I don't know, so I may just be asking something, but why would you guys change something without that data first and just change it? Like, I don't understand, and I'm in early childcare, and it seems like just I don't use one assessment tool for my kids. Like, when they change to ASQ, we still do Brigance also. Like, everybody doesn't fit into that one box, and Dibbles pushes a lot for, lack of a better term, I think a lot of the underprivileged children are not going to do as well with just this one screener. And I don't think I don't think it's a good idea without putting it out there and getting numbers back first to just scratch it out and say, this is all we're doing.
Well, and that's a great point. And one point of clarification too, this won't affect practices that are required of early childhood centers. This is something that'll be kindergarten. So again, at early learning centers, if there is a desire to do this screener, an additional one at intervals throughout, of course, that still would be good. And we are seeing results actually with our economically disadvantaged students, with our students with disabilities. Louisiana has seen some incredible growth and proficiency in those groups this year, which we're really excited about because most states are not seeing that. And I really think that a lot of it is due to just that concerted effort around making sure that our teachers are equipped with what they need to be able to help support those students, and being able to provide that unity of purpose.
So what's like I guess what are we getting from just doing one assessment for kindergartners instead of having these others like the gold and the DRDP? Like what is that benefit?
So again, one of the main benefits is to give some of that time back at the beginning of the year to kindergarten teachers, to streamline the amount of time that they spend on assessment and give them some targeted actions and responses that come as a result of the screeners that they are doing, just to help them be able to use that time more efficiently and effectively.
I have a slightly different question, which is really around strategy, which is from a systems level perspective, some of the most important aspects of developmentally appropriate practice in our investments in early care and education. I'm a little bit concerned that it might get hidden from just having one type of screener that perhaps isn't as comprehensive. So can you talk to me, I know you mentioned a committee, but can you talk to me a little bit about how we're going to capture the effects of what has been happening in the early care and education space if we're going to go in the direction of a screener in this case that is only going to Dibbles, is not going to be as expansive?
And so I will say too that we know kindergarten looks a lot different from a lot of the classes in a school. I know the time that I spent with kindergartners was very, very interesting and always eventful. One thing that we do not want to see is third graders is 3-year-olds sitting in desks in rows, doing worksheets. So there's definitely that need to make sure that our instruction is developmentally appropriate. And there is some policy language around that for kindergarten programs specifically and pre-kindergarten programs in schools, which I think is one of the reasons why whenever you walk throughout a school campus, you do see those kindergarten classrooms looking a lot different from the first grade classrooms. That it is protected in policy right now for those teachers to still have that ability to do what's developmentally appropriate for their students. And that's when, as teachers are working with those students, they see, oh wow, this student is going to need some support with talking to people. We're not seeing the communication with peers working out. Let me reach out to this, to my SBLC coordinator at school and let them know so that they can do this additional screening, maybe provide some extra support, see, is there something else going on? But that kindergarten teacher is focused on providing the high quality instruction they're supposed to provide during that time. And then we've got people who are looking at the instruments, they're trained in doing the screening and assessment, who can say, yes, I agree with you, let's look at this and go that direction and take these next steps depending on what the issue is.
Somebody here can correct me if I'm totally missing a point here, but I thought that in the CCDBG grant, one of the requirements for birth to 5 is a developmental screener. I don't know where we are with that. I know over the years we've gotten waivers and we had a fact sheet that went out to everybody, and that was what we did for a while. That was our screening. I don't know where we are and how that would fit in or could fit in and play into this. If the CCDBG grant is still requiring, I think they are, states to move in the direction of using a developmental screener with every child. I understand this is a totally different assessment, but where are we with that? And wouldn't that meet potentially some of the other questions about other areas of development and how kids are doing?
I think that's a good point because we've gotten federal grants to help us screen more efficiently. And is the one that's being used now, is it the ASQ? Is that the one that's being?
I think that, I'm sorry, I think that could piggyback a little bit off about what you were just saying about maybe a conversation between early childhood and K-12 about how does this handoff look? Who takes on the screening, the more global screening? What does it look like? Where does the money come from? All those good things. But anyway, I'm just throwing that into the mix.
So I would say it might have been a component of of past state plans. We just did redo our state plan, and I don't remember any specific question about that. I think I would definitely remember that. So what we are required to do is have early learning developmental guidelines, and then certainly ACF promotes the use of screening, promotes the idea of additional supports for young children with disabilities. So I'm not familiar with maybe what might have been in the plan previously. I don't believe, and the state plan is basically a set of requirements for what each state lead agency must do. And I don't think of where that is in there currently.
But aren't you is it a mandate that providers are using ASQ for publicly funded kids? No. Oh, I don't know why. I thought there was.
Other discussion?
I just had a couple questions about it. I'm curious, like what percentage, is anyone currently using this screener or no?
The DIBBLE screener.
Yeah.
So right now, it's actually required at the beginning of kindergarten, and then a dyslexia screener is required in the second half of kindergarten, and then starting 26-27, a numeracy screener will also be required at the beginning of kindergarten. So, so right now, statewide, this is our second full year of implementation of this. So, previously, a literacy screener was required at the beginning of the year, but school districts had several options they could choose from, and so we didn't really have a great universal tool to measure how students were performing on literacy statewide. Last year, we got that first year baseline data, and so this is the second full year of implementation there.
Gotcha. I guess I was just wondering how many classrooms it's actually, or what percentage of classrooms are actually going to be impacted by the change, or if some of them are already using them.
Right, so for all kindergarten, so upon this finalization, all kindergarten classrooms in August should have one fewer required screener than what they had this August. It'd be interesting to see what conversations emerge locally. Again, we want it to be developmentally appropriate, not trying to, make make pre-K 4 the next fourth grade. But at the same time, there could be some conversations locally, especially where they have access to some of that transition data for how students come from their programs and then perform the next year. In terms of how, how to prepare students better for things. I know when I was teaching a real teacher changing moment for me was whenever somebody pointed out the need for computer science jobs 10 years from then and asked if my students were going to be prepared for jobs that didn't exist yet. And my answer was, I have no idea if my 10-year-olds will be prepared for jobs that didn't exist yet. But that really changed how I thought about my teaching. And I still taught the same content, but maybe with a little bit different sense of direction and purpose on it. And so there's a chance that this could be for some people that same kind of moment where oh wow, I understand where my students are going to have to go in the next year or two. And so I'm using those same developmentally appropriate practices now. I'm teaching the same content, but maybe with a little bit different sense of purpose because I'm aware of where they're going. And the same could hold true for kindergarten teachers too. Once we get this guidance out, maybe they understand a little bit better where they've been and what their students have done in previous years. And so that might help them bridge that transition a little bit more effectively for those students too.
One comment card. All right. So Farishay, if you want to come on up, there's a spot between Ariel and Christy Bennett. If you want to come on in and just state your name, who you're representing, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Farishay Perkins. I'm the mom of a kindergartner. So really excited that we're talking about how our kindergartners are getting ready for school and ready for life. I really appreciate that everyone's had great comments about what teachers need and how we can help teachers out. I would just ask, as part of this conversation, let's also think about what parents need. A child who knows all of their nonsense words on Dibbles, that's wonderful. That's great information. But if that same kid isn't socially, emotionally ready for kindergarten, they're just going to struggle. And as a parent, it's really hard to hear that, there's there's going to be a gap. You're not going to have as much information. You're really going to have just that 2-page printout from Dibbles to help prepare your kid for school. That's really hard. It's really hard because parents are really the primary teachers of kids. And it's hard to hear that we're having a tool taken out of our toolkit to help get our kids ready for school. And I, as a parent, really appreciate with DRDPK, we can think really holistically about school readiness. Yes, we can think about literacy and we can think about cognitive skills. We can think about numeracy skills and social emotional readiness. And it is so important as a parent to have all those resources at your disposal to know how to support your child. Yes, teachers are important. We should protect and preserve instructional time. And we should empower parents with data on how their kids are doing and how they can support their own children. So thank you so much for this incredible work to get all of our kids reading on grade level by 3rd grade. I'm just really excited for what we're going to do next to support our parents as well as our teachers. Thank you.
Thanks, Farishay. We've also got Dr. Jefferson. And just please state your name, who you're with, and you have 3 minutes.
Is on. Hello, here we go. Okay. I'm Dr. Lee Jefferson, and I'm Executive Director of La Force, a nonprofit agency. Before I got here, though, I was Executive Director of the Early Childhood Network in EBR, and worked with the network since 2014 as a project manager. So just knowing the work that it took for us to kind of build in and get the teachers to accept gold and all of the things that it was asking for us to now get to this point 10 years later, and we're telling the teachers, yeah, you have those checkpoints and we're using smart teaching. All of these things are very, very important. And thank you so much. But when they go to kindergarten, we're only going to check for literacy. It just seems to be, I know that parents are important, as Farishay noted, but I think the work that the teachers have done and then the networks have done to get the teachers buy-in to really look at the whole child should be considered when we're looking at these things.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jefferson. We have Ms. Shanoa Warren.
Thank you. My name is Shanoa Warren. I'm here representing East Baton Rouge Parish School Board. I'm the Executive Director of Early Childhood, but I wanted to make a comment on the process here. I agree with Dr. Jefferson and also with Fairshea. One of the things that we have to look at is when you're looking at an environmental test, such as DRDPK, as well as GOLD, they're environmental. The teachers are assessing them in their own environment. DIBELS is a timed measure. And teachers, it's the best practice not to administer your own students. And so therefore it's a kind of a unknown or unfamiliar person providing that screener. So perhaps maybe starting a small pilot or seeing where it's being piloted at before we can, look at that screener to move statewide with it. So I just would really want us to consider that. That's moving from an environmental to a more formal assessment.
Thank you so much. All right. No other public comment? Okay, may I get a motion to receive the revisions to Bulletin 118 statewide standards and practices and Bulletin 741 Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators regarding kindergarten screeners, allowing staff to make any minor technical changes prior to the March Bessie meeting if needed.
I'll make a motion.
All right. Jonathan Pierce, and do I have a second? All right, Mr. Garvey. Any questions or comments from the members? Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. I will turn it over to Maria.
Thanks, Paula. We'll now move on to an informational item, the early childhood care.
So for the Q4 report, for time purposes, we're going to move through quickly several points of data. As you've requested, we bring this information forward. We're moving, Karen and I will be moving quickly, not because it doesn't deserve robust discussion. We're happy to have it, but to one of the public comments made, Fairshea making in terms of family engagement, we do have time today to talk about some family engagement strategies that networks have employed, and we want to ensure we're able to fit that into today's meeting. And so with that said, as with previous meetings, we're going to bring to you a few data points as it relates to program participation, some work underway at our networks, as well as our Ready Start networks, and some activities. And so I just wanted to start with talking fast to make sure we're out of here promptly on time. But please feel free to ask any questions as we go through. First, as provided at each of these council meetings is kind of a, Karen, if you wanted to go to the next one, a state of the state as it relates to Q4, which is looking at a snapshot of time of October 2024, November 2024, and December 2024, the sites by type. And so as you can see, by just quickly looking at our type 1s, you're seeing a very minor decrease in type 2s, about the same, and type 3, a decrease as well. And then in terms of our family child care, a decrease into December as well as in-home. You can see now later in the slides, Karen will rapidly move with us, very exciting in terms of our performance profile release. You can see compared to 2023 to 2024, an increase in the number of 4-star and 5-star sites. The next few slides are going to provide for you a high-level overview of some of the data as it relates to some of our publicly funded programs. The first in which is going to be our CCAP voucher seats. And so just as a reminder, we reminded you of this in November. In Q4, we were implementing some of the changes that were in effect as of October 1, 2024. And so just for a reminder, this related to presumptive eligibility for CCAP determination. And so that was one component that is now in effect. Child support income no longer being countable in determining eligibility, as well as children with disabilities paying a $0 copay if determined eligible for CCAP services. In terms of children participating in a CCAP in Q4, you'll see October as compared to December, an increase. And just a reminder from when we met in November, we did share with you that we are actively removing from the wait list at this time. We are presently removing from the wait list right now. We are at the wait list. We're going month by month. We're presently in October of 2023. And so just to let you know, you'll see right below the number of children in the program, you'll see the wait list number as of December 2024. I'm here to tell you we're preparing to release the January information that you will see a further dip in the number of children awaiting services since July 2021. It's going to go from about that 6,000 number, and it's going to go down to closer to 5,000. So we are seeing a decrease in the number of children on our wait list, as well as an increase in participation as we continue month by month. We'll continue to update you. As you can recall, we initiated the wait list as it relates to funding availability, and that is why we approach it month by month. Well, we're on speed dial, but you're helping us set that pace.
Libby, just make sure that mic's on.
Sure, absolutely. So the question around this is with the new policy in place with redetermination, what is the process for families that have?
I'm characterizing this essentially, they're given a window, if you will, when that upcoming 30-day deadline in terms of pursuing eligibility until we receive those needed documents. And so Karen, do you want to voice over?
So the family's recertification date remains the same. If your family's redetermination date was February 28th, that's going to remain the same. We continue to notify the family 45 days before that redetermination, as well as the family's current provider, so that they have time to get the application in. Then we continue to remind the family, and at February 28th, if the family has not submitted maybe a component of that application, we're extending in our system that they will remain on the site's roster with the site being paid, receiving services until March 31st. So we're extending it by 1 month, giving families that time to get in any materials they might have missed or needed a little extra time on.
So it is not indefinite. It's not they're going to stay redetermined until the end of time. There will come an end, but it does allow that more of a buffer if we're waiting on one final document, things of that nature. And so just continuing to emphasize that we are continue every year up for redetermination. That process is continuing, but this allows some flexibility when it comes to some materials. There eventually will be a time in which it doesn't last indefinitely.
So I think that we have found that that has helped children not drop from rosters because maybe mailed in applications came in after February 28th for example, but they were postmarked within February.
Two real quick questions. So I noticed from October to December, we've had 10 type 3 centers. We've lost 10 type 3, 3 type 1s, and 3 and 5 of family and in-home respectively. And is there any idea why? Was it license revocation? Was it just people shutting doors? Or
It's always a range of explanations. So sometimes it's people are retiring and they no longer wish to do that. Sometimes it's a change in ownership. They're selling their center. I guess then it would be a new site replacing them, but maybe they don't open until the next quarter. Sometimes it's because they have low enrollment. Sometimes it's because they're combining
okay,
sites.
but
So
the specific data on these,
I would say it's variability. And
it
I would agree.
varies
I wouldn't
every
say we
single
have
time.
a strong, like, this is the marker for why, simply because in my opinion, it varies so uniquely each time. I wouldn't say we have a strong trend to say with confidence, this is the pattern for all.
okay, and then just for clarification, when to the CCAP wait list, if I understood correctly, in January, when January's data comes, we're looking at closer to like a drop, like 900 off.
You're going to see a larger drop in terms of the number on that wait list. Now, and the reason I'm saying we're still in the data, this is, as you know, it's as soon as we say one number, we have another child applying for the program. And so it definitely has some variation. I will say, since we started removing from the wait list, that concerted effort in that space, we're giving up to 3 phone calls to the families on the wait list, we're doing everything we can to ensure that they're fully notified before we're removing them from that wait list. And so that also is very varied in terms of the exact reason for, so if a case, all of the cases on the wait list are certified, but it varies in terms of if they're no longer needing services, kind of the range, because I think we're wanting a lens of, okay, if they're no longer needing services, what have they done since then? Since we're acknowledging, we'll be closely closing in on the 2024 year soon in terms of getting to that wait list of 2024, but we're still actively removing from 2023.
How difficult would it be to get a percentage of those that fall off or those that actually started receiving care?
Services?
Or was,
I mean, we could
Or stuff.
definitely, I don't have that right in front of me, but
Right.
that is definitely something we've looked at just to, for our understanding. I mean, because we're going month by month, we're actually kind of using those percentages to guide us. I don't want to say with confidence, I have a number in my head that I'm worried could be the incorrect percentage, but I say when we look month to month to continue, we are acknowledging that not 100% of those children on the wait list will be receiving services simply because they may no longer need care.
right. So on the surface, it looks encouraging, but then again, we don't know how many are actually falling off or because of
We have the data, just not with us here today,
Yeah.
but we can absolutely share that with
I'm
the
happy
next
to
meeting
follow
and
up
the
with that. Yep.
quarterly report.
Okay. We'll speed up, but I also acknowledge that I will, happy to slow down as needed. Contracted seats. This council we've had several updates in this space. And so just wanted to continue to provide this information for you. As of December 2024, we had 38 participating networks, with enrollment at 3,858. Noticing a slight increase from our previous quarterly report because we have been providing communication. We provided it with you in November. And then I'll also, into the next slide, let you know that we also just updated, it is included in your packet, a letter that we sent out to the networks related to the CCAT B2 program. We are working actively behind the scenes to communicate with networks of any future changes in terms of programmatic structure. The goal of this is to assure that we can have kind of a transfer of certain parts and components of the CCAT B2 program administered at the state level. On this slide, which I'm so happy I have this printed because that microphone queuing keeps popping up. But we have been working with the networks. We just held some office hours to also share out the space. We'll be continuing to engage the networks well in advance of any transition. But one of the first components that we at the department will be assuming responsibility for is going to be streamlining the attendance and underutilization. So contracted seats programs will be in Kinder Connect. And really, there's lots behind the scenes to ensure that smooth transfer. Prospective payments, we have heard across the networks varying components of the payment process. And ultimately, our goal is to be able for this program to also be funded with CCDF if needed. And so in order to do so, we will also similarly be working in terms of determining or redetermining children's eligibility. So lots more information to come on this from the lens of right now we're working on the communication directly to networks first with plans to engage them in person and talk about some of these changes. But just wanted to give you a state of the state of some of the communication that we have shared with networks as it relates to the contracted seats program.
I know y'all are still figuring all this out, but is there an idea of the timeline as this transition?
I think from the lens of a transfer of fiscal year is an ideal scenario in terms of if we were to need to employ CCDF funding, that is the ideal timeline, acknowledging that there are several moving parts to ensure that that's set up, ready to go. But we are ensuring that we're having those conversations to be prepared for whichever scenario.
I think the fear is that we'll be up against it like y'all have been continually because of legislative session. And so with this switch, does this give you more run time to be able to transition networks for it?
Ultimately, that's the goal. I think that's why inherently we've started with communication in January versus waiting until, I'm saying that and it's already March. Oh, it's February.
It's not
February.
March. It's
Okay.
not March.
Um,
It's impending, but yes.
Thank you for that. I'm so sorry. It is not March, it is February. So I think it's ultimately, building a runway as best as we can in that space, starting with networks first, acknowledging that provider communication is a component to that. And that's putting that lightly, right? And so just
What has been the reaction of the networks?
It's overall been very, very heavily thankful because unfortunately funding has ended. Stimulus funding has ended. There's a great burden already on networks, and I think without more financial resources to play into that, it's hard to keep taking on more and more as they tend to do for us all.
Well, just one more question about this, because we know in the past that y'all have really worked very, very hard to keep up with the workload. And so how will this impact your workload, and how do you all anticipate being able to adjust without delay to families?
Yeah, so I think what we're looking at is setting up a new stand-up team just to process this and get these families redetermined first. And it's very preliminary, but that might happen on a rolling basis, for example. You can't really redetermine thousands of people all at exactly the same time, exactly the same week or month. So that's what we're laying out now, a plan for that.
I would just offer though, as a network who has a very large, I think that the faster you can stand that team up to be able, because the reality is you will be having to recertify thousands and thousands of people in the same month because the school year and the way that many networks operate this program is that there is kind of a school year element to it. And I would say, just as speaking as a network, our biggest concern is just ensuring there's no lack of continuity of care and that payments aren't interrupted.
Completely agree.
And so Karen, I don't know if this can be a formal request that in our next quarterly meeting that we maybe get more details about what that plan looks like, including dates, including with the transition from network to DOE. How are we going to transition those families? And again, I think we might have spoke about this in our preliminary call, but for all the providers out there who know Louise Stoney well in that iron triangle, we need to ensure that all seats are filled at all times. And so if we can identify what process exists that, whether that's whatever system you're going to use, so it's a live, here's what Carousel's openings are. Here's what, Rochelle's back there, her center's openings are, so we can get those filled as soon as possible. I mean, there are some great things coming out of this. Weekly payments are wonderful, but just a better idea of a plan. And I know you all don't have all the answers yet, but to ease some tension, and that would be May.
Absolutely. And by then we should have those dates and more of this ready. It should be in motion. Like, we hope that we will be starting the attendance tracking at that time. We should have more dates to share about the payments process by that time. I hope that maybe some eligibility processing has begun by that time. So we'll absolutely share at that meeting. One of you said something and I'm afraid I've forgotten it. Oh, I do just want to point out that, our priority as we get started will be that continuity of care. So it does not mean that more children might not be added into the seats in the next phase, in the next round. But first, we want to get all those children who are still age eligible redetermined and keep them going. And then we'll look at adding more children to fill the empty seats of the children who've aged up.
But also, we'll transition to participate in our office hours to provide us feedback. I think ultimately all of that information is exactly what we've been using to help us really capture any next steps. So thank you for that. Really quickly, ECE fund, we definitely, the commission hosted a panel as it related to that. And so I want to thank your co-chair, Dr. Polito, for participating in that panel, just acknowledging in terms of ECE fund enrollment, again, reminding those on the council as well as those publicly, acknowledging that this is the legislatively created fund, which does require local investment and fundraising. And so with that, This year, we have our 13 Ready Start networks raising local funds, including the 7 additional networks on the next slide, I think, potentially. Oh, no, on this slide. And so noting that you can see enrollment as of December 2024 with over 1,700 enrolled in ECE funds and continuing to enroll. And then the next slide here kind of gives you a further overview in terms of networks new to the ECE fund and continuing to participate in the ECE fund. And so definitely I'm going quickly just because of time frame, but do not want to continue to emphasize the tremendous work that's underway of these networks raising matching local fund to state dollars. All right, and with that, I'm going first time, not because of the incredible importance. I'm going to transition to Karen Powell, who's going to provide you with a snapshot of performance profiles and accountability system. Karen.
Thank you, Malin. So the 2023-2024 performance profiles, as many or all of you know, were released in November 2024, and we are so proud, so pleased that they represent the highest scores ever for all site types, with the most growth occurring in family childcare sites. As you know, it's only in recent years that family childcare sites have been eligible to opt into academic approval and be part of the accountability and improvement system. So I just want to note that when we released these scores, it was from more than 1,800 early learning sites, and that performance profile ratings show continued improvement for previous years, with more than 95% of sites currently earning a rating of proficient or higher. I want to highlight that because when the accountability program began and ratings were first given in 2016-17, there were fewer sites participating, approximately 1,600, and 68% of those sites were rated as proficient or higher at that time. So in these few years, we have had growth from 68% to 95% proficient or higher. And that is just a remarkable testament to the work of so many of you around this table and in our public audience. And again, I just want to note that that was an improvement, including with adding more sites into the system and more sites having to learn the accountability system and learn the class tool and become part of this quality improvement system. So just huge congratulations to everyone. The progress is not only in the K-12 arena, it's across the entire birth through 12 arena. Obviously, just as we said for the K-12 results, we want to continue to improve quality in early childhood. So we are really shifting our focus now from just proficiency to high proficiency and excellent ratings. And we are currently at 68.6% of sites rated as high proficient or excellent. So you can see on the slide that there are 324 excellent honor roll sites. Amazing progress. 579 birth to 2 honor roll sites and 335 top gains honor roll sites. And you can see that the scores for emotional and behavior support in toddler classrooms and scores for classroom organization in pre-K classrooms have increased to the excellent rating. So those foundational domains in the class tool that we have to ensure that we're strong in so that we can then continue to improve upon those higher level domains, we're continuing to also strengthen further. You can also see that scores for infant and toddler classrooms increased by 1/10 or more, showing significant growth for our state's youngest learners. So here you can see the more detailed breakdown of that 95% proficient or higher, how the percentages at the proficient, high proficient, and excellent ratings. And here you can see a deeper dive into the pre-K performance profile scores and the scores on those 3 pre-K class domains. So you can see continued improvement across all 3 domains. There's an overall increase of 0.07 statewide. And again, you see steady growth in emotional support and classroom organization. So we really want to turn attention to instructional support. We want to start raising those scores further as well, but it's just so possible to do when you've got such a strong foundation of emotional support and classroom organization there. You know, children can't learn if they don't feel safe, if they don't have clear, effective guidance and a well organized classroom and activities. So, and this is probably for Paula, this question. So what would you say as a state, if we're thinking about instructional support, what are some ways that we can support that better to help get the scores that support children's learning in that space?
I mean, I always appreciate targeted instruction on instructional support strategies, a host of professional development, again, targeted to concept development, analysis and reasoning, those sort of quality of feedback. How do we embed those robust back and forth conversations, questions to children? And I think that's really going to help move the needle as it relates to instructional support. I wish it was a magic wand, Libby, that we could do one time. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's just continued layered instruction or professional development on those sort of strategies. What can we put into place around language modeling, around quality of feedback, around concept development? And there are ways we can deliver that professional development. But back to Karen's point, you know, I just delivered this tool last week to some amazing teachers in Alexandria, and it needs to work like a well-oiled machine. We cannot have this strong instructional support piece if we don't have an organized classroom or an environment where children feel safe taking a risk. I'm going to ask this question, but if I know that teacher is going to strike me down because I'm not comfortable, I'm not going to ask that question. So we want teachers, or we want children to feel really comfortable. But I think these scores represent strong, you know, evidence in both that emotional support and classroom organization. Instructional support's difficult. It's difficult because we don't know what 3 and 4-year-olds are going to say to us. It always changes. We need to go into a classroom with so much intentionality as teachers and planning. So the more we can do that and better prepare teachers for that, I think the better those scores and kindergarten readiness will be.
Oh, I just want to ask your professional opinion, or anybody here actually. At what point does the class and curriculum implementation? I mean, to me, instructional support, it seems like, what are we instructing? Strategies that you use to instruct, but I think sometimes if teachers don't have a clear, like you talked about planning, you don't have a clear instructional plan, including how you're addressing curriculum, then I think those being stronger in that area may also improve instructional support, because I have something to talk about and something to teach.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering if it's time for us to start thinking about how do we look at curriculum implementation in our birth to 3 space or birth to 5 space, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, feel free, anybody who wants to share more, but I believe there have been many crosswalks between whether it's Frog Street or Creative Curriculum and the class tool. You know, I see this dichotomy between teachers who are like, look, that's great. I appreciate Frog Street, but I know my kids so well. And yeah, I want this theme, but that's just a skeleton for me, right? There are others who need more hand holding and want that. So I think, again, layers of support. This teacher might need more of this, whereas this teacher may need less of that. But certainly, if anyone wants to speak to that, those crosswalks that exist, how we could better support teachers with those. Carmen, real quick, the parallel process that you just explained, I just want to know, that's exactly what we try to do for our teachers, right? Is like you said, that aha moment, that's what we want for our children, whether it's in concept development or quality of feedback. And it's how to be intentional about that practice where children have what your teachers just had, right? That aha moment. And I think it's differentiating your approach. Like you said, that worked for them. You put it on a screen, you highlighted it, and they got it. So what are our teachers doing? Whether it's what you suggested, network support, or whether it's coaching, that one-on-one coaching, or in a debrief with a teacher, or I'm not a teacher, but a debrief with a director or someone who had just observed. How do we create those aha moments for teachers? They're lucky to have you.
That's what I was fixing to say, if she could share that statewide. But I really think professional development is very beginner. I would like to see some intermediate, advanced for those teachers that have been there 26 years and 24 and 16 years. That they may get the 6 score, but still instructional support is low. I don't have time to go in the classroom. I don't 100% understand any of this either because I'm running 2 businesses. So the R&Rs are the ones that are getting paid to do that. And that's what I would like to see, is that they are coming to coach and breaking it down like she says.
I always appreciate at these council meetings that everyone shares what they're doing on the day-to-day level, because some of it we find out from you in private conversations, but you always see me scribbling frantically up here because, Carmen, we can have you share that out at a network meeting and share that model with other, peer networks. And TAFTA, absolutely. We've started to make concerted efforts. We're not all the way there yet, but we've started to make concerted efforts when we plan our EC conference. And as we're continuing to build out more and more of EC Learn, which I'll talk more about shortly, that we build in not only those foundational training opportunities, because we know there is high turnover. You do need the foundational for the workforce, but we can't forget the veteran teachers who say, I need to know what else to do because this is what I've been doing all this time and I haven't heard anything else to help me redirect or get a finer point on it. So thank y'all. And then we'll just take a deeper dive into the toddler infant scores as well. As you know, the toddler tool has 2 domains, infant has 1, but again, across both toddler and infant domains, you can again see continued improvement. Very happy that Engage Support for Learning, which is the toddler version of instructional support, did increase to an all-time high score of 4.49. So that's getting closer to proficiency, but of course we want to see that climb higher and higher. And that all domains grew by at least 1/10 of a point. And then so pleased that through every year of this process, we really see that all site types continue to improve. This improvement and this growth isn't credited to just one early learning site type. It really is childcare centers, early Head Start, school-based sites, and family childcare sites. Okay, so now we will transition into several other updates about networks and about the quality supports that we provide to achieve this growth we're talking about. So Ready Start Networks. These are some highlights from Q4, some successful partnership activities among local Ready Start Network members who engaged key community stakeholders to develop and implement sustainable plans. So 2 networks we wanted to highlight from Q4. The first was the Rapides Ready Start Network, and they were joined by Rotary
and spoke at a Louisiana House Committee on Education meeting in Q4 about the need for strong community partnerships to raise awareness and resources in their community. So they were able to share how by bringing all of these folks together, Rotary members, the Rotary Club itself, philanthropy, the school system, and the Ready Start Network, that they were able to raise multi-million dollars. So we're very excited to watch what Rapides continues to do. Also in Q4, the Caddo Smart Start Network and Bossier Early Childhood Network joined with the Community Foundation of North Louisiana to garner support for community funding in support of kindergarten readiness. So they are working to, build permanent funding with an endowment. So there's really great work continuing statewide. We continue to work to better recognize the achievements of early childhood teachers and leaders across the state. So we continue to partner with Dream Teachers and look forward to awarding the next Early Childhood Teacher and Leader of the Year. We have some awardees in the room. Always good to see them continue to lead. In Q4 in October, the application portal for this year opened. That portal closed in Q1 of 2025 in January. Very excited. So there were nominations for 81 teachers and 72 leaders. And those nominations represent 43 parishes across Louisiana. So I'm excited about that as well, that it's not that it's concentrated in just a few very active networks who are nominating people. More and more leaders and teachers across the state are getting that recognition from those who work with them. In terms of quality supports for early childhood professionals, as Tafta was speaking to, in Q4, child care resource and referral agencies assisted 549 early learning sites, providing more than 6,000 hours of coaching. And so the priority sites and priority factors for coaching are certainly our site improvement planning sites, our approaching proficient sites, new teachers, and also infant and toddler classrooms that are scoring approaching proficient or below. And those coaches are really being encouraged more and more by the department to promote language and literacy development in those coaching sessions to begin targeting and strengthening those engaged support for learning and instructional support scores. Also in Q4, the Tulane Tykes mental health consultants provided support to 158 early learning sites and 938 classrooms in those sites, providing behavior management, guidance, information about setting age-appropriate expectations, and creating supportive environments for children to learn and develop. So as I mentioned earlier, we continue to develop EC Learn, which is our new early childhood free online training and learning resource, where early childhood educators can enroll in and access continuing education courses. So in Q4, we added medication administration, safe environments in childcare, and food safety into EC Learn, but we are continuing to develop additional health and safety trainings, which will be available in the coming months. And then we're also working to develop other quality support trainings to be available later this year. Will that replace all in-person training? No, we continue to fund CCR&Rs for both training and coaching because we know that some teachers learn best in person. Some providers may also prefer that their staff take in-person trainings, and so that CCR&Rs can be really responsive to the local needs of those sites that they serve by having a changing training calendar. But there's definitely been a clear interest in having more access to professional development. In October, we just did a soft launch that was not opened up. And in November, when we did launch it, we had 881 newly enrolled participants, not people who participated in the soft launch. In December, we had another 1,091 newly enrolled participants. And in January, we had more than 2,700. So there's clearly a thirst for more learning. And I think we've always seen that. We saw that as a response to the Bulletin 118 revisions that providers said,
Great. We want to learn more about Dibbles because we want to further support our children with kindergarten readiness. We've seen that with class scores. Okay, we're going to continue to strengthen in every domain because we want to provide further quality support. So here we are again, people wanting to take extra training and improve their practice because they care about what's best for children. And then finally, because I know we need to get to family engagement and we want to get to family engagement because you're going to hear amazing things from our networks represented today. But I'll just say a few words about our supports for teachers working with young children with disabilities. In Q4, the department completed the Young Children with Disabilities Strategic Planning Grant that was funded with the Preschool Development Grant. And that was a collaborative opportunity between the department and CCR&Rs. And so what I'm hoping is that at our next quarterly report, we can share some more detailed information with you about that, because that is what the department is now gathering from the participants in that planning grant activity. But just to give you some highlights at the moment, more than 400 hours of coaching and technical support was focused on strengthening ongoing efforts and strategies to expand developmental screening in type 3 childcare sites. So to Libby's earlier point, there's not yet a requirement, but we want to see earlier, more accurate identification of any disabilities for young children. And so we're really working to expand developmental screening, and we look forward to sharing more with you about what we learned in that pilot.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have any comments or questions? And before we move on, I just want to acknowledge we do have another comment from item 4. Rochelle, if you want to come on up in between Ariel and Christy. If you want, but I know you're loud enough, we can hear you from wherever you are. That's right. And just introduce yourself and where you're from.
Good afternoon. My name is Rochelle Wilcox. I am the Executive Director of Wilcox Academy of Early Learning. We have 3 early learning centers in the greater New Orleans area, as well as the co-founder and CEO of 4 Providers by Providers. And my apologies, the traffic and weather was not working with me this morning. Or this afternoon as I traveled here, but I just wanted to speak on, I know you guys have passed the Bulletin 118 revision, but I just wanted to make sure that I still had an opportunity to make public comment from the provider standpoint. And Dibbles, I know, has been in the school systems for a very long time. However, as a provider, I want to say the assessments and the tools that we currently use, which is TS Gold, it looks at the whole child. It is not just a literacy-based tool. And I know that we're going to look at a tool for numeracy and math in 2026. But I want us to realize that children, the first thing I want to say is I know that we've made great improvements. Louisiana, in reading has gone to, I think, 15 or 16, which is phenomenal. I want us to make sure that we know that the advancements that we're seeing is happening in the early learning sector, right? The fact is that when we invest more and when we do more in early learning, I know I'm speaking to the choir, I just want to make sure that we are doing that because we're able to assess our children through ages and stages, through teaching strategies goal, through all of those things, and making sure that they're not just kindergarten ready, but school ready. Right? So we want to make sure that the providers understand what Dibbles has to offer. We want training, as Karen mentioned. We want to make sure that our parents are educated. I was here when Teaching Strategies Goal was initiated and implemented, and it was rough. So I don't want that to happen where all of the progress and the things that we've made over these last years, as we talked about the class scores, as we talked about all of those things, get thwarted just because we don't have the education to help and support our teachers and moving forward with what is on the Dibbles. How do we do that? And also knowing that little people are not just readers, right? They're all the things that help promote pre-reading skills. They are all the things, they are about executive function and making sure that they are a good citizen inside the classroom. So I just wanted to make sure that we are looking at that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. Marie. Oh, I will. All right, we will move on to an informational item, the Early Childhood Care and Education Advisory Council. Okay, you did that. All right, the final item on today's agenda is a discussion panel about early childhood care and education family engagement strategies. Brittany Cochran, did I say that correctly? Wonderful. Who was you? I'm sorry. All right.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Is there any public comment on the report that we just received from Malin and Karen? Okay, can we get a motion to receive the report into the record? Thank you, and thank you. Sorry, that was Libby and Jen. Any opposition? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes.
All right. The final item on today's agenda is a discussion panel about early childhood care and education family engagement strategies. Brittany Cochran, LDOE Early Childhood Director of Academics, will begin this presentation.
All right. Wait, let me get the mic right. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Brittany Cochran, Director of Academics. And if we can go to the first slide, maybe? Yes. So family engagement activities. In 2023, the LDOE was rewarded the preschool development grant to identify and address gaps in the B to 5 mixed delivery ECE system and revise its existing needs assessment and comprehensive statewide strategic plan. So through this, the LDOE was able to offer Ready Start Networks statewide the Family Engagement and Leadership Planning Grant opportunity. This award provided funding and technical assistance for selected networks, which you'll see later in the presentation who those were, and it was able to develop a detailed analysis of family engagement and leadership efforts within communities they serve, and a strategic plan to increase family engagement and leadership at the local level. So this slide shows you sort of a scope of the collaborative efforts across the grant period. We had 2 cohorts of this grant, cohort 1 and cohort 2. And on the first side of it, it says the RSN, which is the grantee. And as you move across, you can see the collaboration and support that was provided throughout both grant cohorts. So the LDOE collaborated. We had calls with the RSNs that were participating in this opportunity. And they were weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, as they were working through their focus areas. And in that meantime, the RSNs, they were managing and gathering data. They were starting initiatives. They were doing all of the work to engage families. And then they were developing deliverables that were developed by the DOE and then also by themselves, depending on the initiatives they were working on. And then if you move to the other purple side, you can see that we provided, individualized assistance as needed. We did have some consulting and coaching and professional development that was happening. The RSNs also had family advisors support them in this work, and which you'll hear about in one of the presentations we're going to get to in a minute. And then we ended with that analysis report and strategic plan. These focus areas on this slide were our 7 focus areas throughout the grant cohort periods and really drove the work through both of the cohorts. And I'm not going to read all of them to you guys, but I can kind of do an overview. So focus 1 was more on quality, and then focus 2 was development of education and really engaging parents in the education of their children. And then focus 3 addressed families that may speak other languages or are multilingual. And then focus 4 was those rural areas. And then focus 5 was health and EC systems working together. And then focus 6, same thing, but with mental health. And then focus 7 was access. So when the networks were developing strategies, they would come to these focus areas and let these inform the work that they were moving forward with. And here's our lovely map. I do love this slide. It shows you the impact that both cohorts had across the state. So the orange writing, oh, I'm sorry, the orange writing you see on the screen was cohort 1. It included Children's Coalition, Caldwell, Lafayette, St. Landry, and then cohort 2, East Baton Rouge and Washington. So we can move on to the next slide, I think. And with that said, Washington is actually here with us today, and we have Leslie Hodges and Christy Bennett. They were in the second cohort of this grant, and they have a presentation to share and all of the wonderful things they did through the Family Engagement and Leadership Planning Grant Cohort 2. So, Leslie, you're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. But in any case, we wanted to reach out in an organized way. We'd also been working within the community to identify, and we've been doing this for forever, to really identify children with special needs and get them services as quickly as possible so that when they enter kindergarten, they're not just ready as far as their reading and math skills, they're also ready with their language, literacy, physical, cognitive, and social emotional development is on par. So it is ready. They are ready for success, not just in kindergarten, but success in life as a whole. I mean, we found that many families just simply do not understand very much about child development milestones. They may not realize that that their child has a deficit. So we have been working very closely with Early Steps and with Child Find, and also holding screenings throughout the parish. And so we wanted to include this in our child development, in the child development portion of our family engagement, so the parents were aware of what their baby should be doing, what they should be doing as a parent in terms of language, and reach out to them and provide them with as many resources as possible. Because although, resources are there, many families are not aware of how to access those resources effectively. They may not even be aware that they exist. So we reached out to members of the community to encourage them to establish connections with us so that we could better serve these families. We did a project analysis as part of this work. We wanted to create this strategic plan with a roadmap of activities that would help us to continue in the future once the funding for this grant was gone. We strengthened our partnerships within the communities with charitable organizations and community leaders, and we found that the work that we did in this grant with family involvement also more closely connected us with stakeholders who might in the future be financially supportive of early childhood initiatives and also help us to engage with families. For example, providing gift cards to their businesses, maybe providing space for events, things like that. And we found that as we worked with the families, our relationships with these stakeholders grew closer. We also had a website and social media, but we built on what we already had, and we created social media posts, that were directly engaging with parents. For example, we do a monthly blog about child development for parents, but we also have been having a raffle of cute little books and puzzles and things like that. And if they're engaged on the website, they're going to get entered into the raffle, and then they get the prize every month. So, and we've been fortunate enough to have local businesses donate money to buy these prizes, and we found that has increased the traffic on our social media, and also hopefully will increase our enrollment and increase family access to the new resources that they need. We had not established a family advisory council prior to this, but we did. And we were excited to have these families join us, and we're excited about the commitments that they've made, and we want their voices to be heard, and we want them to have a way for to feel heard and to feel valued as part of their child's educational process. We know, parents and families, caregivers are the child's first teachers, and if we help them to understand thoroughly what is going on with their child as far as development, how they can support their child in the future as far as language and literacy, and help them be successful in school at an early age, we will those children will be able to achieve so much more as they enter into the school system. Also, as part of this work, and this was on a previous slide, but I didn't mention it, we also engaged with the workforce and provided extra support because teacher turnovers, as we all know, are a huge problem and an obstacle in early childhood education. So we did pilot an early childhood CDA program for our high school students. And right now we have several students that have totally completed the program. They're seniors, they're graduating with their CDA. They're already working in centers, looking to continue, they're planning to continue their careers in education once they graduate. And we have a second cohort that is coming up, also some very dedicated young ladies who are even working over the Christmas holidays on their online work. And we did this in partnership with North Shore Technical. And so that's been an exciting, not directly related to this grant, but sort of, as you'll see, because we involved some of these young potential teachers in some of our support activities and events. The network supported family engagement events at each center. Each center had a literacy, a fall family literacy night, where there was a definite emphasis on literacy and language. We are serving more children in Washington Parish with speech and language deficits than ever in our history that we've been keeping information and data on that. And so we really want to emphasize to the parents how important reading is for their child's growth and development. And also we want to get books in the hands of the children, which we did with some events throughout the community where we distributed books that we had received from the LDOE, and also some that we had purchased with grant money. Our major event was Share the Magic was its title, and it was at the Louisiana Castle in Franklinton. And we had a strong turnout. We had representatives of the community. We had information resources for families on health insurance, dental insurance. We had special ed services. We also had the library came. They brought resources. There were storytelling. It was just an exciting time for the families to meet and engage with each other within the community, as well as providers who could offer them support in their day-to-day struggle as young working parents with small children at home. And you'll see a few pictures here from Share the Magic. We enlisted the help of, would you like to? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So, whenever we were doing this, Dawn and I were both EC guides. So we were wanting to extend and do more of this so we could do more with the family engagement and getting them more from, being involved and going to really being engaged, which was what that family advisory was. But that was so meaningful to me too, because it really let me know and just listen sometimes. And, when we had the meeting, I didn't stand up. I went and actually sat down with them because I wanted them to feel like they were comfortable with me and to even talk about some things that they had just, no name call, because, we had guidelines and things about being on the committee. And just being able to really just share some things that's been going on that you just take for granted or you don't realize. So it was kind of, it helped me to focus like, okay, I know what we need to go and work on. I know something else, or even just to get some input about coordinated enrollment, how did that go? Did you like how we did evening events? So that we could kind of know what to do. But also with the castle event, that was one of the things that, like, Dawn had said, I would love to do it at that castle because, like we had said that day, Franklinton, Louisiana does really have a castle in it if you ever go there and are able to go visit. So we just thought that that would be a really good thing. It was a really good way for us to really see what resources are in our community. But not only that, it let the people that were there know about what we do in early childhood. Plus, with the families coming and with an event like that, it's when you have the funds to do it, it's good because you can reach a bigger crowd and you can have more resources available. But sometimes too, it doesn't always, you don't always have that. So it really takes, I think from being an EC guide and then working with this and knowing how to work with families because too, I have like a little story. The other day, it was, I don't know, kind of like my little aha moment when I had a husband and wife that came to my house to make a delivery, and they weren't from the area because that's me too. If it's a child and I can help them from whatever area, I'm glad to help. So when they first came in, they were a little, standoffish. They didn't, even when he called, he said, "Do you have a path cleared?" And I was like, "Yes." And so when they came in, I could tell that it was a little, but I started talking to him, which was, I was approachable. And, I mean, sometimes you don't always have that time to have that relationship. So I was approachable and I was authentic. And, they saw that I was real and we were having conversations. And, I started asking them about their children. And, so well, do they go to childcare? Does one was 13 and one was, a 5-month-old. And he said that they do, the younger one went to an early learning center. And so we were talking about, different things, and he ended up getting comfortable enough to tell me that he said, I am concerned that my child might end up having problems like I did. And, he said, I didn't talk until I was like 5 or 6. So, I looked at the mom and I, told her, I said, well, these are some things that you can do, have some conversations. And whenever he makes little sounds, make it back. She said, I want to show you a video. And so it was her mom and him going like back and forth. And I was just like, keep it up, mom. He's fine. I said, he is fine. I said, you just keep doing that and he's doing great. But I think it's just those moments like that so that when you kind of know what to do and you kind of know yourself, like those different milestones and where they should be and what they should be doing and just having those conversations out there too about, what's available. But also with some of these, I was going to tell y'all that, well, one thing too with this that we share, because when we got ready to do this, it was a lot of planning. And so one thing we were like, okay, so how are we going to do this? How are we going to go and these families are going to go around to all these different tables with resources and, we're going to be here trying to work it and do. So we were like, okay, our high school students have to beta and NHS, they need points. They need those service points. So we reached out to our high schools and we said, can they do this and get some service points? So when you look at some of these and, you know, some of these pictures, like the one with the princess and the frog, those were, and actually she was one of our high school CDA students too. And so there were several that came in and that's how they earned their points. And then also, like I said, one of my kindergarten babies, because I did teach kindergarten for 18 years, and I can tell from hearing all of this today, those interpersonal skills are very important, please. Because as a kindergarten teacher, I knew that like they needed to have all that in place. But that's also some of those things we can work with parents with. But the little queen is our fair queen, and that was one of my kindergarten babies
And
up there.
I taught her pre-K.
Yes.
Grades to write.
Yes. So, but one thing too, you know, when talking, you know, mainly of Dawn and McKaylee, they were really good about like coming up with this idea too of how are we going to get the kids to go and listen? Because, you know, they're wanting to go do other things so that the mom can really hear those resources. So they had different little pictures and they had the bingo cards and the kids had to get it stamped and they would get a little prize at the end. So my grandbaby who's in pre-K 4, that has really taught me a lot watching him be in early childhood and going through and seeing things. That was one of the things I told him. I said, you know, okay, I said, you've got to go and do those so you can get that prize. And that's what helped him to go around and do things. So, yeah, so that was what I just wanted to share a little bit about the high school.
I'm so glad that Christy mentioned that she and Dawn had both gone through the Early Childhood Guides program. Because as a small parish, the fact that they had already done that work and been part of that program helped them as facilitators to move on with this. And so that was the fact that we had 2 out of our 4 staff members that had been through that, had participated in the Early Childhood Guides was very useful to us in our strategic plan. And you know, that was very, very important. But we did have a number of community partners as well, as you can see from that list. This was our invitation to the families and children. And you can see we tried to include as many partners. We have Hancock Whitney Bank, we have health providers, we had dentist, dental center. What we want to try to do in the future, since we won't have this funding like this available, you know, is expand on this and possibly next year get some of our community partners to work with us. We may not be able to do something at the castle, but possibly at Winn-Dixie, possibly, you know, maybe something even at the school board, something that would be fun for families to come to where we have a snowball stand, different things like that, but tie it to our coordinated enrollment at the same time. So we can get, we can provide resources, but we can also provide opportunities to enroll the child in the various programs that we have, our centers, and we also have our pre-K 4 at the university. We were one of the first districts in the state, and I don't know how many there are now that offered universal pre-K, but has a reputation within the parish and the community too, that has shown parents how important it is that children have an opportunity to learn and to grow before they actually get into sixth grade. But we were really pleased with the support that we got from our families. Hold on that in the future. And this is just a slide that just shows some of the partners. We set them up with tables, and families would go from table to table. We had all different types of resources. Do you want to do some, Kristen? Well, facts and findings, I'll keep it kind of brief because I know we've got pressed for time. You know, we have seen increased family attendance at the special events that we hold. We're hoping to have increased numbers, and we think we already have, of referrals to early steps and child find from the development, and, you know, by parents understanding the developmental milestones and also bringing their 3-year-old to the parish screening. And we also administer the ages and stages to all children as they enter they're 4 years old as they enter our program. Every child is administered ages by their teacher, their PK4 teacher. And we've implemented ages and stages in the early learning centers, and Head Start was incredible tool for diagnostic purposes, and red flags for parents. We have, we created our family advisory board, and we hope that, we can expand on that as well. And build bridges between that family advisory board and our community. And then we don't want to forget the children that aren't able to come to, to a center, but are still members of our community, and provide them with outreach as far as books and resources, and through the early childhood guide program, and that, the families are aware now that they can come to us, we have someone come to us with wrongfully evicted from a home with temporary home because there's a homeless person inside, so 3 of them were under the age of 5. So Chrissy felt comfortable enough to come to us with her problems, and we were able to provide her with some resources for, the whole situation. But overall, this is an incredible experience, and we're very pleased that we have been given the opportunity by the Department of Ed, and we're very excited about the progress that we're making. And thank you for inviting us to tell you all about it. If anybody has any questions. And we left some of the materials we created, some really family-friendly materials. Not everything that is available is always friendly to the parent. We have one pamphlet, headlights, what to do, real life things, and plus, suggestions for books, and guidelines for infants, toddlers, and food, as to milestones. They can understand it.
And I'll say too, like, one thing that we really enjoy was collaborating with East Baton Rouge, because we learned a lot from them. That's how we got the whole idea of that, if you would love, share, and tag, and so that we would get that out more on there. And then also on the brochures, McKaylee on there, because whenever you utilize your, younger people, they can really do a lot of things on there. So she does a great job with a lot of our stuff, and with doing the whole brochure. So I'd give her some information, or, Dawn, I know she helped do the resource one. And, but the lice thing came up because we had a parent we heard at one of the that told us, one of our classrooms, that they didn't know, they didn't know what to do. They kept getting it. So we were like, okay, well, let's create a resource. So, but at the bottom of those two, we also have those QR codes so that they can go on and they can see like our web page and things like that too from there. So,
that was a very important thing we added technology-wise, because QR codes are everything today. So, they're readily available. That will link them to the resources that they need.
Thank you so much, Leslie and Christy.
Are there any questions?
All right, and we have some slides. Speaking of EBR, which Washington worked in collaboration with pretty intensely throughout the process. Their slides we're going to skip just for time purposes today, but we encourage you all to look at all the amazing things that they accomplished during cohort 2 of the Family Engagement and Leadership Planning Grant. So the next steps in this, and we're just kind of skimming over them right now. So the next steps in our family engagement activities is the department is in the process of reviewing a series of early childhood family engagement bulletins that we have, and they're called the Be Engaged bulletins. These bulletins cover important topics surrounding family engagement. Much of the topics that you heard about and even more are covered in these bulletins. So we are those are under review right now. And we are taking our learnings from cohort 1 and cohort 2 of the Family Engagement and Leadership Planning Grants and using that to inform our review of these bulletins. So furthermore, as part of the bulletin review process, we do plan to reach out to both cohorts of the Family Engagement and Leadership Planning Grant. I call it the FEL grant. I've been saying the whole thing, but that's the acronym. At the end of the academic year to discuss learnings and create more outreach opportunities for other networks across the state and statewide. So that is all things family engagement from me, and thank you for having me today.
All right, any public comment related to the panel discussion? Okay, just a note that our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 7th, 2025, and that concludes our agenda today. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you all for coming. Jim, what are your next steps for the task force?
Writing the legislation.
Oh, gosh, okay. Oh.